Hey, it's Suffering Student here, and today we're going to be talking about UP, which is the Unified Process Model, which is a way of doing software development. So it's kind of like a process, software development process. And it is an iterative and incremental software development process framework, as mentioned. And this is the basic model, and we have 4 different phases: Inception Phase, Elaboration Phase, Construction Phase, and Transition Phase. And in each of these given different phases, we have some kind of things we will be doing. We'll be doing business modeling, creating requirements, analysis and design, implementation, tests, and at the end, deployment. So, how it works when using unified process for software development is that we have this line of time which shows these different iterations, and you just work through each iteration, and these colors and these boxes shows what focus we have in each iteration. So the inception phase is kind of like an introductory phase, and the goal is to identify the initial scope of the project and create a potential architecture for your system, and to obtain like the basic knowledge, and it's creating like an outline of the requirements and mostly creating the business case or business modeling, so setting up the basics. And then maybe look a bit at analysis and design. We don't really start implementing yet. We don't really start testing yet. And we don't really do deployment. Deployment is mostly at the end. So that's like introductory phase. Then we have the elaboration phase. And it should be mentioned that in each of these phases, we have different iterations, which like takes a set amount of time. So we might be working like 1 week in the inception phase with the beginning, and then we might end with an inception document, for example, which kind of like finishes that phase. Then inside elaboration might have like 1 week where we start doing some stuff, and then another iteration. And after each iteration, we might like figure out where we're at or where we're going next. But elaboration phase, now we have the basic business modeling done, and we have an outline of the requirements. So in elaboration, we would start or like kind of finish our requirements, and maybe start on and definitely start on analysis and design, and then not really that important yet, but we'll get starting on some kind of implementation. And if we're doing any implementation, we'll maybe start doing some tests. And the goal of the elaboration phase is to prove that the architecture of the system, so to prove that like the startups we started, like the beginning of the project we started in Inception, is still doable. And it's definitely at this point we decide whether or not we want to like finish or continue the project. So one of the larger phase is construction, which, as mentioned, like the name probably tells you, it's constructing the program. So we have more focus on implementation and less focus on requirements and analysis and design, because that should be mostly finished in elaboration. However, like UP, it's kind of like a fluid process, so we don't really ever finish any of it. But each iteration might have different focus. So maybe the first iteration in construction phase still have some focus on requirements and analysis and design. But at this point, we're going to be starting implementing, either doing maybe some prototypes or starting the finished program. And whenever we start implementing, we are going to be start testing. And the goal of the construction phase is to build working software on a regular incremental basis, which means the highest priority needs of your project stakeholders, and of course meets our requirements and follows the analysis and design we've been doing previously. So when the program or the software in the end is more or less done, in the construction phase, we would go to transition phase, which is kind of like the last phase, which is most focused on testing. And I haven't been talking too much about deployment yet, but mostly getting the thing deployed and then getting it out to either the buyer or the user or whoever is actually going to be using this program. So the goal of the transition phase is to validate and deploy your system into your production environment, or to bring it to your customer, or however you're actually doing. But this is the basics of the UP model, unified process, which is, as mentioned, now it might make even more sense that it's an iterative and incremental software development process framework, where we use iterations to work, and we are incrementing through these different phases, and we are not doing all of it at the same time, but to some degree we are, where start with business modeling requirements, finish requirements starting analysis and design, and construction more focused on implementation and test, and in transition the last test and deployment. So if you enjoyed my pretty simple walkthrough of unified process modeling, please leave a like and subscribe, and I wish you all a wonderful day.